reconvening. We are. Of the extraordinary council meeting. And order of business there in front of you, section 6. So straight on into it. I think we should do apologies. That's as we thought that here, but we have an apology from Steve Keller. Been no others. Someone like to move that apology? Thank you to Councillor Williams. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Cherry Campbell. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion's carried. I'll read it as we just move on. So moving straight to reports and item 6.1, confirmations of minutes in the hearings committee on the 15th, 16th and 22nd of May. Had a bit of a chat with the chief about this, and I think would appropriate if we just go through it page by page. I have picked up that. I want to start by saying to Robin, and whether this is normal form or not, I don't care. I want to thank you. There's a lot of work in this, and you must have been burning some midnight oil to get through all of this and go through the videos and go through it all to get it down. And so please, I have picked up a couple of small errors in there, but as we tick through that, just know that your work is seriously appreciated. I want to thank you for that.
On the smooth round of applause section. So that we can do that.
So if we move with that, we move straight on to the 15th of May and go through page 1. Any page 2. Yes.
Second line, Grant side away is a he, I think.
Yes.
Sure.
Can be whatever he chooses.
Didn't say she, he.
Hold it. No. That was a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
It was for actually Lou. It was her conflict of interest.
I'm definitely a
So
she.
it's definitely a she. So turn the page back.
Councillor away, she attended the meeting.
That's saying Lou attended the meeting.
Yep.
She's a contractor to the.
Good
She.
something though. just
She.
in case. Thank you.
So we good on that?
Yep.
Okay.
No, under.
Yeah, because so it's still under Lou's conflicts.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I'm with you. Sorry.
Oh,
Actually, so
Yeah.
word by word.
Do.
You did.
right. Okay. Any others on page 2, page 3? Page 4, pretty straightforward. Page 5, Thursday the 16th of May. Page, sorry, yes, sorry.
Sorry, I was just looking through. I think I was looking at I was looking at the pages of the document, not the numbered pages.
All
I
right.
just have a question. In the past, when people have left meetings early and whatnot, there's a timestamp sort of put on the minutes. I wonder if that was required for my exclusion. If there should be a noted time of, it says that I'm present for the meeting and I wasn't there for all of it. So I wonder if that needed to be,
From,
just
yeah.
times that I was in the room.
I think you're correct. It should have Councillor Aileen from and the time included.
Thank you.
That'd be useful. Thank you. We see that.
Does it have further down?
I thought it does have that. It's further down on another page.
Yes, under
You rejoined, but we don't have.
meeting was adjourned and reconvened it. Is that what you're looking at?
So I was looking at the minutes of, on page 1 of the document where it says that I was present. In the past, I know when councillors have left, it says in brackets sort of when they've been, when they've left early or that kind of thing. So I wondered if there needed to be a note put in the present section.
On
At the-
page 1.
Yeah, at the very top of the minutes.
Added into page 1. Fine.
got that.
Or after page 2, after. Yep.
We'll leave that in
No, that's good. I just wanted to note on. Thanks.
the.
Thank you. So I'm looking at page 9 of our document, page 5 of the minutes, and moving to page 6 of the minutes, part 2. That's what Aileen noted. There's page 7, on page 11. Page 8 on page 12. Page 9, scoot over to page 10. Page 11.
Worship, I've got just one I'd just like to, the Wellington Free Ambulance
Mhm.
on page
Page 10, 11,
10 or 10.
10. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we can possibly get needs just a little bit more clarity, because it doesn't really make sense in the way that it's written in there. The first motion was put that Brian and I, Brian moved the motion and I seconded it. Then the motion was actually adjusted. And the second motion was put forward that CDC continues to fund WFA at $3,000 per year, which was voted against. And then the other motion was re-put. So if you leave it the way it is, it looks like I've voted against WFA receiving any funding at all, but
Yeah, I got
it's that, so that's not how it went. If you get my point. So I voted against them receiving the $3,000 per year because we were going back to the initial motion that hadn't actually been voted on at that point, and that's when that failed. So
The order is incorrect? Okay.
So it was moved, and then that motion of the 3,000 was
An amended
an
motion.
amended motion.
Yeah.
Which failed, and then the original motion, which we went back to, then failed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get my head around it. I couldn't understand my
And
notes.
we-
Change the order of those.
But the net result is we did vote to not give them any money.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's what we meant, but
Just the order and the accuracy. That's all. Let's get complicated listening to.
it's quite a few
Video.
hours that.
Yeah, that was a video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't.
We will note that the amendment makes sense. Any resolution is subject to amendments. Okay, 11:15,
Need to give some money.
Enviro Schools, Victoria University, Forest and Bird, Five Towns Trails. Twelve and 16. Okay, moving through.
I've got one on page 14, 18. Down the bottom of the page, that the chair of the hearings committee is replaced was actually councillor Aileen that moved it, and councillor Crackney that seconded it. So it's just the wrong way around on the move.
Right. 15, 19. Up to there. 16, 20.
Yep,
Yeah, there is one in there.
got
Got it?
yeah, the cyclorama project. had councillor Gallen, I think it's just a typo. Councillor Gallen voted for it, but also abstained. It's just the abstention.
He abstained, yeah.
Yeah, so that was just a.
The numbers are correct.
Yeah.
4-3, it's
Yeah,
just
it's
that
just, I think it's
it
just.
got tagged on some. Moving down to 1721. Eight, 1822, anything on there? 1923. End of the minutes.
Back to the recommendations.
So the recommendations, the council confirms the minutes of the hearing held 15/16/22 of May 24. Someone like to move, please? Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Della. Any discussion, any comment? All in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving to 6.2, oral submissions for the hearings for the long-term plan. I think I will take it that they're read. They are there for the record. Is there any discussion? Any comments anyone would like to make? Any errors pointed out? Someone like to move that we receive the report? Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Newman. All in favour? Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Moving to haven't got my little marking things on. 6.3, changes to the long-term plan post-consultation. Chief?
So just following on from request to seek clarification, I sought advice from Simpson Crescent. Unfortunately, they can't make it here today. As I said in my email earlier, Judith has come down sick and our partner is in the High Court today. He's presenting in the High Court. He's not, just to clarify, he's not being judged in the High Court. So they are unable to be here today. But so I just wanted to clarify there were 3 questions that I initially asked, and we expanded it to a 4th question, which was just around the clarification of, so what happens if we don't adopt by, or if we are unable to adopt by the end of June? And he's answered that question, which is we drop into a Section 50 process. With that, happy to talk to it if I can. Otherwise, I'm happy to take questions back for Simpson Crescent and further clarification.
Seek another chat with them if we feel like it's necessary at any stage, but looking for that surety and security around our consultation document, and we now have that in detail. I have to say I was quite surprised myself by the length of the advice. So any questions at all around the background? Thomas, anything you want to comment from Jeff around those proposals?
So at this stage, I think we'll provide the advice through to audit as part of their audit process, and I think that'll give them a bit of comfort and hopefully speed up the process of the draft LTP. As they pointed out, there's no need to look at Section 93B, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. They'll concentrate on Section 93(6) of the plan. The interesting piece that did come out was the difference between materiality and significance, and that their feedback seemed to be materiality is far more important when you're doing an annual plan or enhanced annual plan, and when you're doing a long-term plan, it's more about significance.
Very useful. All right, that's cool. Someone like to move, we received the report.
We're going to have a discussion.
Discussion. Oh, you're going to have your discussion first? Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. I just like to thank Jeff and his ELT team for the way that they completed our wishes basically and got advice that we sought. I think the paragraph on the bottom on page 51, in summary, this advice confirms does not appear to be any legal impediment to processing the council's long-term plan. I think that sums everything up that we needed to know, and I'll just endorse Jeff's opinion from earlier on, and say thanks very much to everybody, and I can't see any reason why we can't move on now.
I note the comment. I guess the thing I'd raise is, we received an email. I had concerns about the safety and security and wanting that assurance. I think my email said I just wanted the assurance that we were okay with that. I think I asked twice in that email that if we could get AOG's opinion on that. The advice from the Auditor General himself that we should urgently seek legal advice because he can't give legal advice, as Jeff's already pointed out, was the one thing I don't think we could ignore. And so when the Auditor General himself says you should seek legal advice urgently, that's a signal that you should. And the good thing is that we now have firmly in writing, which the Auditor General's office themselves will use as part of their assessment.
Will they help pay for it?
Oh, well. You could ask Dale. I'm sure you could talk them around. That's so we have that security, which is all some of us were wanting. So it's good to have that in writing. So you move in, Brian?
Yeah, okay. I'll move the adoption.
Thank you.
Report.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Cherry Campbell. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion's carried. Thank you, Jeff. And we move straight to 6.4. Deliberation decisions for the 24-23 long-term plans. Let's go.
Good afternoon, councillors. This is the Mayor. I will assume that the paper has been read. This as the decisions from the deliberations meeting over the last week or so, and so they've been outlined in this paper. And yes, got a question shortly. At the same time, as a result of last week going through some of those projects and capital expenditure, we have phased them and recalculated the proposed rates increase for the next couple of years, or for the time of the LTP. So currently, with the revised changes, the current proposed rate increase before growth for year one is 13.5. So that has dropped obviously from the consultation document, but also we technically have smoothed the rates, you could say, over the next couple of years by making those adjustments. So those adjustments are now 13.5% pre-growth, and once we have the final numbers, we'll put that through the rating database to determine what the growth factor is on that number. And of course, these numbers are still subject to audit and final changes that should come about from that review. Are there any questions?
So the growth number we used in the draft long-term plan was
0.5, and it's likely. We spoke to QV last week and asked them how they were getting on with the additions to the rating database, in particular new subdivisions. So they were going to try and put through as much as possible, so that growth factor might go up a little bit more. The cutoff which will drop the rates. Sorry, yep, one goes up, the other goes down, and the cutoff for QV is in about a week's time. And at the same time, we take the revised budget and put the two together and work that all out. So there's two components. What's the proposed rates increase, and then what is the growth factor?
Discussion.
I have a question, and it's just the fly winch, so it's just above 1, 2, 3, 4 at the bottom of the table under next steps. So it was agreed to fund them across years 3 and 4, but in the column to the right it says year 1, year 2. Should that be year 3, year 4? Or is
That's where it currently is.
That's where it currently
Yeah.
is. Okay, cool. Yes.
Misleading. Good point.
Yeah, I just I thought it was where it
Yeah.
currently was, but I just wanted to get it right in my head. So cool, thank you. That was my only question.
And I could just add to that those figures change slightly as the inflation rate, they get inflated over the outer years, and those figures are slightly different. So they will vary a bit.
Cool, thank you.
Is that just on CPI or is that just on?
And
Depends.
Bill.
It depends what the figure is. If it's OPEX, it gets, we have an inflation factor for personnel, we have an inflation factor for general OPEX, we have an inflation factor for infrastructure capital projects. So it depends,
It does.
but it is bill based.
So just to clarify, so the rates increases we're looking at in the out years are in fact inflated.
Yes. It is also subject to review, including inflation rates, interest rates, audit will both, everything will be reviewed as part of the audit.
I clarify, so they're inflated, but they have no growth. So the CPI inflates the numbers, the raw numbers that we've put in. Growth will deflate those raw numbers because we've got more properties. So just to clarify, the numbers here are inflated, yes, but have no growth. So it's the worst possible picture.
Conservative.
Most conservative.
Don't use.
Are there any other questions or comments? Discussion. Eileen.
I've got a few comments to share. So I see this as our last opportunity as a council to discuss this long-term plan. I think the next meeting we have as a council will be voting yes or no. So please indulge me for a few moments as I share my final thoughts that I want to share with you. I believe right now we have the real ability to make people's lives harder or easier. We have the power through the decisions that we make to ensure our residents, who we are here to advocate for, are not left unable to pay their rates bills. When we had people come to submit to council, like Mike Jones, who spoke of retired residents who are cancelling their insurance policies because they can't make the rates instalments, or others who are getting reverse mortgages, eating away at their sole asset to make rates payments, I believe something is entirely broken in our system. Or is this really a system we're purposefully designing? Surely we are not doing our job properly if we allow this, not only to continue, but to increase as we vote to pile more financial pressure onto our residents. I believe we must show financial restraint. Core business cannot be compromised, but there is plenty of scope outside of our core business and required service levels that we should be looking to reduce. I mentioned to you all last week, I've received dozens of messages from locals who are struggling with rates increases. I won't share them all with you today, but I'd like to talk about one story that I've been told. This was a professional man, also named Steve. There seems to be a lot of them around this town. He moved to Carterton after living his working life as a specialist in a major law firm over the hill in Wellington. When he sat down to calculate his rates over the first 3 years of this long-term plan, 50.28% was what his rates are set to increase over that time. Now, to be totally clear and transparent, that is his total rates bill. Greater Wellington rates are included. However, I want you to all remember that our residents aren't really interested in where the rates money is going. They only care about where it is coming from, their pocket. Now is not the time for financial frivolity. There are seasons we go through, both personally and as a country, where times are good and the purse strings are thrown open. Now is not that time. Our country is hemorrhaging money and our councils are too. Last week, during the Reserve Bank's official cash rate announcement, Adrian Orr stated that he gained confidence personally from the fact that inflation in housing had fallen. He said there were key domestic cost pressures that were much harder to move. He said what is left now is insurance, rates, and rent. In an interview the next day, Mike Cosking said to Adrian Orr, councils are crazy and out of control. To which Orr replied, we have to use the tools that we have. We run monetary policy. We don't run councils, end quote. The thing is that at this table we do. We run this council, and how we run it is impacting the state of inflation, and in doing so impacts the lives of everyone. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm just reiterating what the Governor of the Reserve Bank is saying. Council's rates are a key part of the problem. This is our last real shot as a council to make changes. The long-term plan is it. For the next 16 months or so, we will monitor how the budget is spent. But this is our last opportunity to set that budget. Our council has grown significantly over the past years, both in size and activity. However, we are not all responsible for what this council has done in the past, but we are all responsible for this long-term plan. This long-term plan shows a 20% growth in council in real terms, including expectation around population growth and inflation. What justification can any one of us make to council being 1/5 larger? We need to do more to get this rates increase down, otherwise we are rightly to be held responsible. At our last meeting, in my desire to see costs driven down, I suggested motions around decreases in staff number, due to the fact that 40% of our operating costs are staff. I was told that was me overstepping my role as governance and stepping into the management territory. The Local Government Act was pointed to as evidence. So I briefly looked into the Local Government Act 2002, as well as our Carterton District Council Governance Statement 2022 to 2025, which was prepared in accordance with Section 40 of the Local Government Act. It states, the Chief Executive implements and manages the Council's policies and objectives within the budgetary constraints established by the Council. If we as a Council believe it is necessary to implement a hiring freeze or a wage cap, we are not only operating within our governance role, but it is entirely our responsibility. I believe it would be a failure of leadership to allow this long-term plan to go ahead in its current form. Our people deserve more from us. That's why they elected us. As our Chief Executive suggested last week, there were decisions that we made that were discretionary in nature and could be revisited in order to get the average rates number down. I was heartened to have Solitaire and Johannes come forward with options in their departments to save us ratepayer money. I would hope other managers see fit to do the same if allowed the opportunity. I believe we need to vote no to sending this to send this long-term plan back into deliberations and have further conversations. Thank you.
That's all. So much to say, so little time. But we've all been around this table for the last year and a half, including Councillor Ayling, and we've undertaken an awful lot of work, not just through the LTP process, but in the normal course of events for council. And at the end of the day, democracy, there's more to this job than just playing to the cameras. If any of the councillors want to get their point of view across and make the changes, we've got to get more than half the people around the table willing to accept that. And, you know, we all have that equal opportunity. That we've put so much work into going through these numbers and going through the work. Everybody on this table has, including the staff. And what I haven't heard yet is what would the benefit be in voting no to a council long-term plan? Councils can't not have a long-term plan. Councils have to set rates, even at the unpalatable rates. So I'm open to understanding what, other than a symbolic gesture of not wanting the long-term plan to go forward, what is the purpose of pausing? That's an open question. I don't understand what that would gain for council.
Okay. Can I just please suggest that we have, all of us, a responsibility to represent the views that we believe people have. There are some who are pro some policies some initiatives and some who are opposed. I think don't know that right now it's helpful to try and change some of it. I think I know there's a strong sense around the table as to where most people are going. Put your views and please do it respectively. I think comments about playing to the camera are particularly helpful for a constructive debate going forward, Councillor Williams. So if we could just keep that tone and put our views on the table, that's fine. I'd be happy to do that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Other questions? Councillor. Oh, you want to have another speaker? Okay.
Well, just with respect, Your Worship, Councillor Ayling a number of times has given her forthright opinion here and in the media about how she thinks about us and our staff and how we conduct things and the type of language. I don't think my phrase playing to the cameras was any more provocative than some of the statements Councillor Ayling has made in the last 2 months. So I just put that on the table.
I'll leave it there then. Major point. Councillor Cretney.
Thanks, His Worship. Just in reply to Dale, all I would like to say is if anyone took any self-gratification from what occurred with Grace being excluded, I think they need to think very seriously about whether they should stand and represent their community. And that's all I'll say to that.
Any further comments on the document or?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the document.
Yeah.
That's what we're actually here for this meeting to do, I believe. I would actually like to congratulate staff on producing this 13.5%. I mean, when I saw that, when I read through the minutes, I was like, yes, bearing in mind what it's 70-something% rates increase from other councils was between, was it 15 and 25%?
Yeah, the
wasn't
average
it?
is
Yeah.
19 and 20 at the
Yeah.
moment.
So I saw that and I thought that was great. And I guess a little bit in response to Councillor Ayling's statement just before, it's when we're looking at things like and for our ratepayers, but also for council, sort of our roading costs, just remind me again, up 37% just on roading costs, and our insurance costs are 30% increase as well. So just to remind our ratepayers that they're getting hit in the pocket for huge insurance increases. And I know that I stated at the meetings the other week how much just, one of our cars had gone up. So for us to land at 13.5 before the growth figure is thrown in, that made me feel, I don't like having a rates increase in double figures, but to me, I went, it's probably as good as we can do. And thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Lawrence.
Well, all I wasn't going to say anything because I'm not sure that anybody's going to change their mind. But I do think if we look at the long-term plan, there's nothing much frivolous in there. It's mostly about wastewater and roads, and I mean they're all, and I guess maintaining the event centre, but it's all pretty much just trying to keep the ship afloat. Really, there's no new town halls in here.
Councillor Newman.
Probably echoing what Steve said. The only thing I struggle with is it feels like there's a little bit of a lack of vision, but I get that's the time we're in and we've got to knuckle down. And I think we've worked really hard to get to this point and had 2 days of really good conversations about it. And I'm pretty happy with where we've landed. And yeah, thank you to Robin and to all the staff and everybody. I think it's hard work. Good.
Yes, Stella. Thank you. My opinion is, as most have already said, we have worked hard to get to this figure, and once again, thank you to staff for reaching that figure of that we're at now, 13.5. If anything, and I always like to look forward, and what worries me is keeping our infrastructure in a workable, usable, and the right condition for the job. And you know, it's one thing to we could have cut more, but hey, if you keep on cutting and never catch up, even staying the same, you don't catch up. So to me, we've got to do what we've done. And if there was one wish that I would have liked, I would have spent more on transportation than on the roads. But other than that, I'm happy at where we are. So thank you to everybody.
Okay. The Councillor Gullins forwarded through an email. I've also had a phone call from him whilst he was on the train. He's expressed some comments to me around the area that my comments are, look, I get it that we started this road a long time ago. It's been 12 months.
18 months.
18 months, yeah. And it's quite understandable to point to the work that we've done, all the various workshops and all the different bits and parts of the process that we've gone through, including the rates review, which sets some plank policies, which then guide and steer the LTP number processes. So we've done that. But it is also fair to say that in that 18 months, a lot has changed. A lot has changed. And to be blind to those changes, in my opinion, would be wrong. The Three Waters debate, since this conversation started, we had a government that was hell-bent on taking all the Three Waters assets. We had an election that told us all that was all going to change and we wouldn't lose our assets. Now we're on the brink of deciding about a water services entity that's going to take our assets. And along with that, now Councillor Newman's been quite right to remind us all that 18 months ago, we made a decision that we would want to hand over our water assets, and see, good advice there about we don't know what a new services entity is going to do in terms of allocating priorities to Carterton Township ratepayers, in terms of carrying on the work that we've done, or the plans that we have. So the principle was get them in as good a state as we could for handover. Well, that game's changed as well. And now we had headlines around a $51 million error in Wellington, which suddenly makes everyone who might have just starting to warm to the concept and the idea of getting the scale advantage and the cross-subsidy advantage that comes with being part of a Wellington water services entity is now not looking so flash. And so we're backpedaling up again and scratching our heads and thinking there are a lot of changes that have happened since we started this process, and some have been watching those and shifting with the dynamics. And the management team, I know, has probably had to tear your hair out as these dynamics have had an impact on how we approach the problems. Cyclone Gabrielle and the recovery and what isn't happening. We get told 91% subsidy from FARS one day, and within how many weeks? 6 weeks? It was down to 71%. It's been a moving feast. And to say that the decisions we made 18 months ago, 12 months ago are sacrosanct and should not be reviewed, I don't agree with. I believe everything should be on the table as things move forward if you want to avoid a disaster. So it's very fluid. I think one of the conversations we've had, and I know the table is divided on the belief on the view on this, and that's around 5 towns trails, and that's around cycleways. And we looked at the different councils' wavering commitment to 5 towns trails. We looked at where it was going to advantage us. We have had clear signals from the government as to what they think about what councils have done in that space. And I know that any request from us for funding from government will be looked at in the light of what we do with our current money And if we want money for a water project, we need to understand we will be scrutinised against what we're currently doing and what we've done in the past when we've had money. And CE and I've had this conversation, and I think in some areas we're absolutely totally aligned when we talk about the water resilience group, when we talk about the AOG and the body that you're, a senior advisor on, Jeff. And well, are you sharing it, or no? You said no to sharing, didn't you? That's right. So these things are testing us. And I think what it does is it draws us down to where we sat at the end of the hearings prior to the chair closing off, where we had a conversation around the $815,000 on cycleways. And what I took away from that was a broad view that the table would be happy, that the hearings committee would be happy to have council refer their report back to them to give them the opportunity to reconsider that 815,000. Now, I know the paper says that the cycleway funding has no impact on ratepayers. Well, that's not exactly truthful. It does not have an impact in terms of increasing them because the money's already been budgeted. The money's been allocated, whether it's CapEx or OpEx, it's already there. Some of it's external funding, the 500 or 600,000 is external funding. But you've also had advice from the CE that that money could be appropriated into waters projects in line with the government's current thinking and where they're going, and to alleviate ratepayer rates increases. So I would like to think that conversation where we said we would refer it back for reconsideration, if it comes back no change, that's it. If it comes back change, it would likely have an improvement on that 13.9, was it 6%? 13.5%. So I just want to put that, because we're going to go to the resolutions, and there's a process which I'm going to ask the chief to explain to us so we can consider that as we go through the resolutions, to either take that opportunity or not. But I think I'll just close by saying I think staff have burned some long hours and have had to pivot continuously throughout this process, and I get that, and I appreciate, like all of you, I appreciate the work and the effort's gone into it. But I would say that for all the good intent and for all the gains, the questions around staff numbers are not going to go away. The questions around what control council actually has over OpEx, in particular employment, and increases in numbers, changes in the organisation, will continually be asked given the 40% number. But if there's one that's going to leap out and test us, it's my view, it's that $815,000. The other question I have is, I've asked it a couple of occasions as to what the highs would be in commercial and industrial, residential and rural. And I still haven't received that. What's the maximum? I think I've asked it in emails.
I think we'll have the rates examples for the adoption.
Yeah, we will have that information once we finalise the numbers.
We haven't run it through the.
No,
because we've got an average, and I think you pointed out to us right in the earliest days, Karen, that you didn't really like the average figures, and because they don't tell the story for what the real impact is going to be, and I think that's been alluded to here today. So I really would again ask that I have those numbers, please.
That will form part of the process once we've agreed on finalising the budgets. That goes then into the rating database, which is also updated from QV, and then we produce the impact on the district. But the information produced by the QV demonstrates the averages in those categories. I think industrial and commercial was nearly 50%. Okay, so that's me. Now, I think is there anyone else that'd like to make a comment? No? Go straight to the resolutions. So, Councillor Lawrence.
When is the appropriate time to talk about the cycleways? Is it if the plan is sent back to the to the hearings committee, or is it up for the council to have that discussion before deciding whether to send it back?
Well, I think we could have a conversation here under recommendations, but and if there's a strong sense and a feeling, I mean, we had this conversation prior to the hearings closing, and we said that it was a very clear option, and everyone seemed warm to. I think there was a majority seemed very warm to that proposition, because it may well have a deciding influence on some people's decisions whether to support it or not.
Would it help if I explain the process?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair.
So the process is council can either accept the recommendations or the decisions from the deliberations.
That's recommendation 2.
As correct. So recommendation 2, you either accept those recommendations in full. You can't accept some of them and not others. You have to take the lot. If, for example, you wish to see some of those recommendations changes, you have to reject the recommendations, the decisions of the hearings deliberations. And at that point, you have 2 options. Either council can hear and deliberate themselves again, so you would have to undertake hearings and deliberations yourselves, or you can send it back to the hearings committee for reconsideration. And you may be able to provide an emphasis and say, we wish you to reconsider the particular decisions you've made. We would have to, again, adjourn this meeting, reconvene the hearings meeting, and go through that process.
Is everyone clear? Any further questions for the chief? So in short, we put the recommendations 1 and 2. We can discuss recommendation 2, and based on whether we want to push that discussion, we can deny that and then open another resolution to refer it back. It would be very short, it would be very focused, and it would be very quick.
Question, if it did go back to the hearings committee, then set a date for that new, bearing in mind we need to give public notice.
That's a good question.
Which would then push us out again from making this decision, which will then again jeopardise the audit, which is coming in at the end of this month.
Yes, audit are here now preparing, and they are here in full on Tuesday. So the LTP audit officially starts on the 4th of June.
How much notice do we have to give the public? 24 hours.
For it, unclear on a committee. I know for council,
we seem to be able to convene extraordinary meetings of the council very, very swiftly.
A week's notice, and then one was three months.
Didn't bring standing notice. I will need to double check that.
There might be something specific around the hearings committee.
Yeah. That's great.
Jeff, could you give an indication, please, of what the 815,000 would do to the number if it was put onto the wastewater headworks as such? Where would the 3.30?
I think if we just work backwards with $2 million worth of capital spend is 1% on rates, so that if we put it on capex, it would be slightly less than 0.5% on the number, and that would show up most likely part in year 1 and mostly in year 2, because the capital spend is usually forecast partway through the year. It's about 0.5%.
Can I just?
Yes.
Is there a reason why we couldn't put it onto OPEX for water treatment?
Yeah, so we could potentially put it on OPEX. We don't have an OPEX project to attach it to, so it would just be a net on OPEX, and I would need to clarify with DIA that they were comfortable with us doing that. It would suppress year 1, and we would have you would have a higher jump in year 2 because your OPEX would is going to
So, but if it's 200,000 for a 1%, we could potentially, if we put $800,000 into operating costs in the first year, that would be a significant decrease in our rates in the first year.
Don't have 800,000.
Sorry.
It's 520
It's 520.
better on funding.
Yeah.
And then the balance was carried forward, but the 520 could be reallocated.
And
Yeah.
that the carry forward could be reappropriated as well. And that could be reappropriated to compensate for the extra money we're borrowing for Wainawa.
My understanding is the 295 is in the current financial year and is being spent currently towards could you clarify please, Glenda?
Yeah, so there is some of the 295 that is currently tagged for spend this year, with some of it being carried forward. The majority of the work will take place next year. However, the recommendation that was made on the position of the trails has slightly had changed our thought process. Do you want me to talk about what we suggested, Jeff?
If council wishes to go through that, I'm more than happy to talk through that, if that's appropriate.
Thank you.
Following last Wednesday and the conversation that took place at the end of the day, we went away and we had a look and a thought process around what it would look like if the 520 wasn't a part of the trails work. The work that's currently happening in the trails space is specifically working with the Carterton District Trails Trust around the development of the bridge from Carterton to Greytown. That work's currently happening. We've got a paper coming up to Policy and Projects, next Policy and Projects, to talk further about that. And the design work from Matarawa to Lincoln. So with the recommendation that got put up for trails, it started the process at River Road going through town to Clearville, and it excluded the bridge work, which excludes the work that that community group has been doing. So what we were thinking about was, do we just repurpose the 295 to continue the work and the investment that's already taken place with this community group, finalise the bridge work up to detailed design, have the detailed design of the trail up to the bridge completed, have the scoping work or what detailed design would look like to go from Lincoln Road to Clearville, and support, as per Councillor Creekney's suggestion, the 5 Towns Trail Network within that 295, so that that whole project, once completed, could be handed over to a community-led group and build, and everything from there onwards is with the community group, not with council.
So where's the 520 and all that?
So the 520 is better off funding. So what Glenda has proposed is that the connection, the bridge, is probably the most important piece, because that connects us to the whole trail network that gets from Carterton through to Tony, Porirua, so the connection is the piece that was missing. But if you wanted to, you could just pick up the 295, which we've currently got in this year's LTP. You don't have to make any decisions around that carry forward. Deal with the 520 better off funding and allocate that towards a water project. Now, it can't go to the Wainawa project because Wainawa is not 3 waters, it's processed water, but it can go to other waters projects.
Do we have sufficient other water projects? I'm just thinking specifically in year 1 that 520 could be allocated to under OPEX, because that's where we're going to get bang for our buck.
Yes.
Not through
significant OPEX projects. They're mostly capital projects, sludge removal, headworks, all of those things are mostly CapEx.
Okay, so if it's mostly CapEx and we allocate that in year 1, then it's just over 0.5%. So it's not really much of a, yeah, I mean, it's still something, but it's, yeah, I'm just trying to get my head around the figures and the impact. So, yeah.
So with Better Off funding, obviously it was set up through the last government with Three Waters. However, we were looking at spending it obviously on cycles. So why could we not spend the Better Off funding on our roading network?
Since the removal of, I now forget what it is, affordable waters.
Yeah.
Three Waters reform, forget what it was called at the end. There's been an instruction from DIA and the central government which says if you reallocate anything, it must go towards Three Waters projects. It cannot go to roading, which is why it can't go to Wainawa, because Wainawa is not a Three Waters project, it's an industrial process water project.
Mm-hmm.
So I can still go to it.
2 ponds in year one.
Yes. So there is scope there and for 520 of that. I mean, there's scope for the whole lot to go, but I think we've heard the compromise that staff have come up with, and it's
Part of the 295's already allocated.
And that's-
Yes, anyway, isn't it?
so I guess, you know, that's why I think to some that might mean that's a good reason to put it back to that conversation, tidy that up and then move forward.
Mm.
And it might change how some people think. I think I can tell you Steve Gallen is of a similar mind that we should do that. Councillor Newman.
With what, sorry, can I talk to Glenda? What you proposed then about how the Five Towns Trail could come under that 295, 215, whatever the number was, 295. If we left it as it is now, could the Five Towns Trail come under the 820?
No.
Oh.
Because you guys voted to turn down the Five Towns work, so it would need to be a new motion.
You've made a decision not to fund the Five Towns Trail Network. Management couldn't then use some funding from another source to essentially go against the decision of council.
That's right.
Just a question of advice from Jeff. So it sounds like we're in a bit of a tricky position with, if we went to go back to the panel deliberation, we need to give the community notice. Can council, seeing as we're here, reject the first point and then as a council make that decision ourselves? Does it have to go back to the hearings panel?
The process is because council hasn't heard the hearings and hasn't deliberated, you are unable to pick up a single piece. You would have to go right back to the start of the hearings process.
And you think we might need 3 days notice to the community if we went back to the hearings?
No,
Is that correct?
no, we don't. No.
Okay.
Volunteer, please help us. How much notice?
Section 46 of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act provides that if an extraordinary or emergency meeting of a local authority is called and cannot be publicly notified in the manner required or permitted by subsections 1 and 2, the local authority must cause that meeting and general nature of business to be transacted at the meeting to be publicly notified as soon as practicable before the meeting is held, or if it is not practicable to publish a notice in the newspapers before the meeting, to be notified as soon as possible on the local authority's internet site and in any other manner that is reasonable in the circumstances.
I'm voting for myself to have the most helpful person beside Karen. That's pretty much opens the door, I would say.
So that means that we could send this back to the
Yes,
hearings committee.
Yes.
As long as we tell people on our
website.
on their website that we've done it.
You could adjourn this meeting.
Yes.
You could reconvene the hearings panel or council could hear it.
No, council can't hear it. No, council cannot hear it. I don't believe council can hear it unless they go through hearings.
Mm.
The hearings panel, you could reconvene the hearings panel.
Yes.
That could be a very short meeting.
Mm.
I don't know how long it takes to get something up on our website.
But that could be after the event. Yes.
Be done before 4 o'clock,
I was thinking 4-3.
before 3. It could be done very quickly. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, I'm I think back to the conversation that the hearings committee had. The opening budget, I think, was 2.4 million and after a great deal of discussion and debate around the merits of cycle trails, the merits of the Five Towns Trail network and the pros and cons and all of that, where we landed was a 60% reduction in what was proposed. And I think we agreed that, or the reason it's in here as the recommendation or the deliberation is that it would be a retrograde step not to stay focused on the cycle trails within the Carterton district. And I think we talked about the merits of the Matarawa and Clearville. And yeah, I'm unclear personally as to going back to rediscussing it. Yes, there's an option of taking the no bet or the no worse off funding and potentially saving up to 0.5% increase. I'm trying to weigh up in my own mind around what the impact of that would be to the district in terms of progress, in terms of looking forward, in terms of connectability and all those other conversations we had over the length of time I've been in the council. And I guess what I'm saying is I'm comfortable where we landed, and I haven't heard anything strongly supporting a change to that. I don't know.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Just because we're starting to circulate again. If we move to the recommendations, and one is that we received the report, and the second recommendation is accept the decisions. I think once we get to that recommendation, it'll tell us what we will or won't do. And then we can just, otherwise we're just going to keep talking. And I mean, I know I was getting cold before, but body has really warmed the room now. And just move forward.
The reason we're having the discussion is so we have a fully informed resolution.
I understand that, but I think now it's
You're right.
become a bit circular. So,
but I think what is clear is that there isn't a time issue. We could reconvene this afternoon and we could conclude it all today. So, I think is there any final? Yes, Councillor Lawrence.
I was greatly encouraged by what Glenda said, because the concern I have about withdrawing all of the funding is that we've got this community group working on the bridge, and if we don't have anything in the long-term plan that will connect the bridge to anything, their chances of getting any funding are zero. Now, I think I said to someone the other day, I've spent about 12 years trying to get people to come up from Greytown to Carterton at the weekends. And we know they won't come by car. I suspect they might come by bike. And if the money that we've got allocated in our current plan is sufficient to get a proper budget and a scope for River Road to Clearville, that would get me where I want to go. I realise that others have different destinations in mind.
Okay, so I think we'll settle there. And I think we will, with all that conversation, which I think will help as better informed people. Let's move into recommendation 1. Recommendation is that we receive the report. Someone to move. I'll take Councillor Terry Campbell and I'll take Councillor Della seconding it. All in favour that we receive the report?
Aye.
Aye. Against? The motion is carried. The second recommendation, which we have been discussing, the recommendations, we accept the decisions of the Hearings Committee deliberations on the long-term plan rates, remissions and postponement policies. And as the Chief points out, that is all or nothing. Would someone care to move what we accept? Moved by Councillor Williams and seconded by Councillor Newman. Is there any further discussion needed? All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4. Against? The motion fails. I won't, so I don't use a casting vote. Therefore, the motion is lost. So that leaves us to the next question, which we will have to, we're looking for a motion to do what?
Yes, they're on. Is Steve Gallen's vote counted at all?
No. And I can tell you, Councillor Della, he was very clear to me on the phone around his position on the cycleway discussion. So it's, but we can't take it.
No.
We can't take it. Yep. So there been the motion, but as I've already declared, the motion is lost. So we're looking for a second resolution.
Let's clarify something. So it was, you did vote against it, but then
I did vote against it, and I'm not using the casting vote. So the motion has been declared as lost. So we're looking for a second recommendation. And I'm assuming there are people at the table who wish the hearings committee to reconsider that aspect, their recommendations, and in particular that aspect.
That aspect and the funding for the Five Towns Trails Trust.
Yes. So, Councillor Lawrence, are you of mind to move that? And is there a seconder for that? Councillor Aileen has seconded it. Is there any further discussion for clarification prior to putting the vote? Right, so looking for a way forward. All in favour of referring the recommendations back to the hearing committee for reconsidering that particular aspect of the cycle component of the budget? All in favour?
it's a sticky situation.
Well, it's 4, and against 4. So the LTP does not progress. Do you want to take a recess and have a, well, you can't.
Can I make a suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps council may wish to instruct the chief executive to look at options and bring that up to the meeting of the 26th of June. It is a relatively small amount we're talking about here. We could go away and come back with more options, which would provide full council the opportunity to make that final decision
On the 26th?
on the 26th.
Would the mayor like to reconsider in view of the situation, his commitment around casting votes? I'd be happy if you changed your mind.
Well, the issue is that the hearings committee reconvenes before I even consider that. I mean, I've been pretty clear on my elections, just as I was clear on my election campaign that my driver is to focus on core business. And we've been tried to be true to that. And Councillor Terry Campbell, as chair of the hearings committee, has followed my lead on not using casting votes. So unless someone wants to change their vote.
Can we put another recommendation forward
Yes, you can.
in light of what the CE has just shared, that we accept the decisions from the hearings committee's deliberation, so that, and then at the end of that comma, and looking to you for words,
And instruct the CE.
instruct the CE.
Yeah, that could become challenging because it's, we're changing a decision that has been made as part of a council decision. So that could become problematic, actually.
It's a point of order. Well, you feel free to move another motion. I'll take motions as they come.
You just did, didn't you?
Or we just follow the CE's advice, which I think most of you have confidence in the CE's advice.
Well, if we're in a situation where we're not going to proceed with a long-term plan, I'd like to change my vote.
Well, the motion's been declared. Sorry, Chief?
We could bring this back through policy and projects, so we could bring the trails project back.
My sense is, and sorry if I should, just my sense is, if Councillor, while I know for a fact if Councillor Gallen were here, he would have voted for that referral back to the hearings committee, but they can't do that. So my sense is the danger I see is not having a high level of consensus at the adoption of the LTP. That's what I foresee as a danger. Yes, I'm going to go, Councillor Cretney, because you've hardly spoken.
Jeff, bringing information back to us on the 26th, will that include looking at possibilities of how it could be used in OPEX?
We could do that. I'd be able to clarify between now and then as to whether or not that was a possibility with the DIA. Yes.
Yeah.
But
It's a question.
what about audit? I mean, does that mean the LTP can't go to audit?
Two things. We have to go back to the DIA and ask for clarification, and then audit would have to check that view as well. So there is a risk that it may not be able to be used for OPEX. And they have identified that it should be used for capital water infrastructure projects, if you wish to redirect it. Because at the moment it's been tagged with the DIA that it's cycle trails at 520. So to change that agreement, we have to go through a process.
I do.
Councillor Chair Campbell.
It's a question, and so motion 2 has failed. I'm just looking at the recommendation 3. So it instructs the chief executive to reflect the decisions in an updated draft long-term plan rates and remission policy for consideration at the meeting. Could we then insert about the recommendations and clarification on that 500, specifically state that?
For recommendation, yeah.
Recommendation 3?
Yeah, for recommendation 3 to be valid, recommendation 2 would have had to pass. There are no decisions at this point in time. So that's the way forward to get the decision was the attempt to get the decision, everyone to agree on the decision was to get a quick meeting, reconsider, come back with a decision, yes or no, and then move on accepting all the decisions. But that's been thwarted by 2 motions failing. Councillor Ailing.
Also a question for staff. If the 500,000 better off funding needs to be used, or if I prefer it to be used for capital expenditure within water, I wonder if Johannes would have suggestions of where that money could be better spent in terms of water.
There's a $500,000 project called sludge removal in year 1.
Yeah.
There, done. So, Councillor Newman.
Question, can we just reword the recommendation number 2? Can I insert a word and then move that motion? Or not?
You can move.
Like, could I say we accept all decisions from the hearings committee deliberations on the long-term plan and the rates remission and postponement policies? Could I move that?
Sorry again?
I've just added the word all in.
Because it's already failed, you can't re-put it, but can you re-put it slightly?
Reworded it. Can I modify it?
No, because no.
Okay.
So we if there's another motion. Yes, Chief.
Point of order, sorry, not point of order. The standing orders state 23.9 where a motion is lost in a situation where a substantive motion that recommends a course of action is lost, a new motion with the consent of the chairperson may be proposed to provide direction.
Can I propose a new motion?
By the chairperson.
Oh, you do need to.
It's okay.
I need to ask your permission to propose it.
Councillor Lehman, give us your thoughts. Yeah.
I propose that we move that we accept all the decisions from the hearings committee deliberations on the long-term plan and the rates remission and postponement policy.
Its motion's essentially been put. And
But it's what?
It's a new
It's
motion.
a new motion. I can reword it.
New
some
motion.
more. I can thesaurus some words. What defines a new motion? How different does it need to be?
new motion.
I
don't.
Oh.
I think that's contrary to the spirit of the first motion that was seen.
thought
We've
we
had-
had to have
With this-
a substantial different outcome than the original motion.
Yeah. Can you read that section out again for me, please, Chair?
So in a situation where a motion that recommends a substantive motion that recommends a course of action is lost, a new motion with the consent of the chairperson may be proposed to provide direction.
Okay. and the
Doesn't
direction.
say
It doesn't say it
No.
has to be substantially different. It just says a new motion.
Well, voting against that motion, I'll hardly like to move that motion again. But I am of the mind to take your recommendation that you suggested right at the start as a motion. And that, I think the guidance you suggested there, Jeff, was quite helpful. If you want to put that to me again,
Does that,
and I would move it.
We could add on to the motion that council seeks advice from the chief executive on options for $520,000 better off funding currently allocated to cycle trust. And you're not asking me to change a decision. You're asking me for advice, and I can bring that advice back to council.
I so move. Did you get those numbers?
I couldn't.
so that's,
Saying
that would come back on the 26th of June.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you get that, Robin, from the chief?
Council seeks advice from the CE and options for cycle trails.
Use of the better off funding,
Use of better funding,
better off funding for options other than cycle trail.
better funding, yeah.
So that's all the wording of number 2 with that as an addition.
Number 3.
Number three. He's moved to
Number 2.
essentially,
But you said we couldn't adopt number 3 because we hadn't adopted number 2.
he's moved a new motion that we seek advice from the chief executive. We're not, we can't move 3 because we haven't decided on 2.
Okay.
He's given a new motion, which is, just for clarity, Robin, are you able to read that out?
Council seeks advice from the chief executive on options for use of better off funding
Allocated.
allocated to
I
cycle.
wanted to reflect the decision.
Correct.
Does it have to be all the other stuff as well?
No, that's not,
pick that up
that's what's gone. We come back to that later on after we get the advice.
So what happens with all the other decisions?
So I think if you're comfortable with this motion and that passes, I think you then may be able to re-put Councillor Newman's motion, which was to accept all the decisions of the hearings deliberations. So you may be able to go back to that motion and consider that motion and then work your way through. But that you are seeking advice from me, I can bring that advice back, which may may resolve the impasse. But you would have that process would see this council accepting all the decisions from the hearings committee deliberations. You're not referring it back to hearings committee.
And
The decision.
That's
was raised
right.
with council, which is what you've done. with
You've asked me to come back to council
Council on that specific
on a
item.
specific item.
Without the ability to change anything.
yeah,
At the LTP on the 26th, we won't have the ability to change anything, no matter the information you come back with. You'll provide us with information that we'll look at and go, oh, yeah. But we've already agreed to accept all the decisions from the hearing committee.
There's a policy and projects
Mm.
meeting on the 19th. Yeah, we probably need a decision before then, don't we?
Well, audit.
Or do we
But
need a
next week.
decision before then? You're right.
the other solution was just to go to the hearings committee, get them done by 4 o'clock. But we seem to have lost that.
If we have an extraordinary meeting prior to the adoption, if we've got that on the 26th, could we do the 12th or the 19th?
To be audited.
The challenge will be audit. We won't have a set of financial statements that are reflective of council's view.
There must be a way around this. We're in furious agreement.
Yeah, there was voted down. So, all people wanted was to reconsider for an hour. That
Perhaps
was
do you
all.
want to take a
Let's take a break and then we'll just check some. I think we should take a break and could have been done in 2 hours. Could still be here.
so we'll
Yeah. To reconvene in at 2:30.
2:30. Very good.
2:30. Oh, of course, yes. 2:30 is 2:30.
It is, sorry.
It's a long day.
Just for them.